Welcome again to the University of Pennsylvania. I'm not a landscape architect, but being around for 13 years teaching in the department has forced me to think, design, teach as a landscape architect. They also know me. I will never finish in 10 minutes, so please cut me off. This is a quote from my best friend. If we want to live better, our neighbors also have to enjoy a better quality of life. And this applies to continents, nations, cities, and neighborhoods. The gap between the haves and the have-nots is widening, and not only in the developing world. It's been said many times today that climate change is going to enhance poverty, migrations, resentment, violence, terrorism. Informality is not a new phenomenon. The cities that we cherish today, this Barcelona in the middle of Paris, were all huge informal settlements, and at some point we engaged creative design and planning with what was there. Just that the magnitude and the velocity of informal growth has never occurred in these dimensions. Some quick pros of informality: quick, rapid, malleable, transformative. They're fractal, they're compact, they low in energy consumption. They develop very strong ties, identity. But it's not all a bed of roses. For the most part, they're located in peripheral sites, high-risk locations with difficult accessibility, poor open space, infrastructure, services, with severe environmental problems, and physical segregation, when many countries, especially in Latin America and Africa, allows for the emergence of the control of drug gangs and violence, and of course with very weak political representation. So how have we responded to the process of rampant urbanization in the developing world? Well, I'm going to try to go quickly through some of the systems and demonstrate their weaknesses. The first idea is that conventional planning and urban design work against informality. This is one of 200 plans that I enacted when I was in public office in Venezuela. And in all developing countries, most of them had a colonial past. That means that the land is in very few hands. When you enact a plan, you're pushing the poor out, those white polygons at the side, to the sites that the same plans deem unfit for urbanization. Housing is not the solution either, because public housing, social housing, always falls behind the demand, and also it doesn't offer the benefits of informality. In the 1980s, the system of called site and services was developed that acknowledges this problem and said, let's use the energy of the people that know how to self-construct and provide an urban framework, basically lots, grids, and parcels where you could develop. And this proved to be extremely successful because with less resources, you could help more people. So from the 1980s, and the last images are Aravena's famous elemental thing that led him to the Pritzker Prize. You provide a landscape and you use the energy of the people. But this works well at a very small neighborhood scale, but fails at a larger scale. Then came another generation, which we've seen in the last 15 years. It started, proudly to say, in my country, the plans of rehabilitation of existing informal settlements. That is, carving public spaces, services, relocating people from the floodplains. These are some of the initial embryonic attempts that we started doing in Venezuela. It came to a halt, by the way, thanks to the presence of the so-called socialist revolution that operated from top to down. Whereas these ideas flourished in Brazil with Favela Barrio, in Bogota, and now we all know the pièce de résistance, the filet mignon of this, has been Medellin, with a very outstanding process. Bravo a las colombianas in the audience. Now, these things, of course, to create space, infrastructure, accessibility, you have to relocate people to substitution housing, as we see in the image. So these processes are extremely laborious, time-consuming, expensive, but they have to be done. Now, the problem is that this type of corrective surgery works, again, well at a neighborhood scale, but doesn't that work that way on a metropolitan scale? Sorry, I'm a mess here. Because even if you improve at a local level the neighborhoods, most of the services, well-paid jobs, universities, markets, still occur in the formal city. So, what we learn from this, that housing is not the problem. It's rather the lack of a landscape framework that allows for the self-initiative. Okay, now here's the challenge. 1 billion people live today in self-constructed cities. The projections are that this number will double in only 20 years. Whoa. So what can we do? Well, these are sort of the ideas that I'm advancing and learning from all that's been done in informal settlements, improving informal settlements, landscape urbanism techniques. The idea, I call it the informal armature approach. In a nutshell, it means it is easier to educate a toddler and to foster the process than correct a serial killer at 95. Let's not wait to have a problem, but let's foster the occupation of the informal settlements from the beginning. And so the system is preemptive, transformative, it attacks the physical and the performative, it works at different scales, it emphasizes the public realm, we've heard that all morning, it secures spatial requirements to cope with the changing demand, and this is maybe the most important contribution of this, and the method has to be very simple and adapted to local conditions. As all design systems, I propose a system of components, and I've divided them in these three. One block is called corridors, the second patches or fields, and the third one stewards. I'll go very rapidly. Ian McCart, I guess, will be very proud. You go to the territory and you say, well, these are corridors of mobility, of water. We protect watersheds, the streams, good soils, archaeological sites. Now, the thing is that we just can't map it and legally protect it. We have to give it use, significant use, so the occupants, the community, has an emotional connection to them, and you keep them from unwanted occupation. So these are the cool spots, the green spots. Contrarily, the attractors pull people to the area where we want the locations to occur, and that is providing accessibility, water, sense of care, love, institutions. Come here, don't go there. So these are the hot spots. Gray things are the patches, I call them receptor patches, is make land available for auto-construction, for self-construction, in which the inhabitants don't feel that they can be evicted. You come and you do your own thing in this land that we've pre-selected to be the adequate sites to do so. And this occurs in many ways, or random occupation, or through site and services. That was an experiment that we heard held here with students at Penn, or like the Colombians do with private developers that lot the land. So go ahead and invade, occupy, squat, do your own thing, but supported by the system that we're providing before. And then finally, we have these red patches, and the idea is that these will be the uses and the services that will never occur. We just saw in the previous Mexico presentation, miles of informality with no schools, no parks, no hospitals, no manufacturing. So how do we have these patches where we'll include these uses that are in any formal city? The problem is that, again, zoning does not work. So let's say the little patch of the left, we can have 4 or 5 acres that we use it as a recycling site in the first 5, 10 years of occupation. When people already have consolidated their home, they buy in Home Depot, and you move this patch to another frontier, and that patch can be converted into the park, into the manufacturing. So this is not only zoning, it's understanding how the system works and how you operate to make it transformative. And finally, these little dots, which I call the stewards, I guess John Dixon Hunt would call them the garden keepers. They're custodians that look after the sites and allowed to monitor the process, to enhance changes, to be guardians, to be there, and to, of course, participate in these transformations as the community goes from a small community to part of a huge urban territory. So all this works like a network of components to create a very robust urban ecology, as Mr. Coroner would say. Quickly, I think I have some time. Yes, how some of these ideas can be adapted to different places and cultures and scales. I'll go very quickly without exploring them. In this case, this is a professional work done in Venezuela, where in the year 2000 we had 30,000 fatalities. So essentially, it's green infrastructure, mobility, reorganization of wastewater, relocation housing. This is a very interesting academic case studies that we developed in Zimbabwe, where the main problem is water and food production, because there's no sewers whatsoever, and all the wastewater is going down to the aquifer, and that's what they're pumping up to drink. So it has one of the highest risk disease in Africa. That was an ASLA award. Another one is in Marta's land, in coffee production area. Very beautiful Marta, World Heritage Site and all this, but to introduce the great coffee of Colombia that we all drink here is sunlit coffee that eliminated a lot of the forests, or tropical forests. So this is reforestation with traditional species trying to introduce the original coffee. This is another case study, in Medellin, also in Colombia, where we're creating the armature, the framework for allow for self-construction over defunct quarries. This case study was fascinating. Where's Ignacio? Bunster in Chile. Global change, a gift from Australia, invasive eucalyptus desiccated the land. The fires spread to the barrios. 30,000 people lost their home in one evening. The armature here is to protect from, create buffers, retain water, and create a botany that is fire resistant. This is in my home country, a little town where my grandfather came from the Dutch islands to buy cocoa and never left. The floodplains is dedicated to produce local materials, construction materials, to avoid the inadequate architecture that's being done with imported and very expensive materials. And finally, this is the last studio that we're carrying out now. If you go to Meyerson, it will be exhibit. It will go to the Quito conferences. I think this is a fascinating theme where you use the armature to tie the existing with the new, the formal, and the informal, and make the system even more resilient and more complex. Well, some of the images, I don't want to bore you with this. Now, requisites for this to work. There has to be political leverage. There has to be acceptance that informality can be fostered, can be induced. You have to assemble public land. It's the only way to break away the evilness of the real estate market. We have to train young people to understand how to design and think and accompany the communities, and there has to be transparency, which is almost impossible in developing countries. What to do now? Spread the word, preach, pilot projects, undertake further research, and this is a call for immediate action. And I finished on time, I can't believe it.